Hi everyone, I'm Teacher Fed. That's F-E-D. So for today, we're going to talk about some basic things that you have to know about the English grammar. Sometimes, the most basic questions can cause us confusion. Why? Because when you have a question like, where do you live? You need to know what preposition to use to answer the questions correctly. So, let's look at the board so you can learn how to answer this question correctly and confidently. So, suppose you need to give your address, the actual number where you live, the number of house. Then you say, I live at 7 Oxford Street. Okay? So, where do you live? I live at 7 Oxford Street. So when you're giving the number with the street name, remember to say at. If you're just asked, which street do you live on? Then you can say, I live on Oxford Street. So when you're only giving the name of the street, use the preposition on. Now, just for you to know and remember, there are many words which basically represent the word street. You can have something like street, road, avenue, drive, boulevard. Okay? I live on Oxford Street. I live on Stanford Road. I live on Princeton Avenue. I live on Cambridge Drive. I live on Harvard Boulevard. I don't, but hypothetically. Alright, so next, when asked, where do you live, as in the city or the country, you have to use a different preposition. You have to use the preposition in. So, where do you live? I live in Seoul. I live in Korea. Okay? So, if you're mentioning the city or the country, then you want to make sure you use in. So, I live at 7 Oxford Street. I live on Oxford Street. And I live in Seoul. Here are a few other points that sometimes you need to mention some more detailed information. There also you need to know what preposition to use. So I live at the intersection of Stanford and Princeton. So you have two streets. So this is Stanford and Princeton. And you live close by. So you can say, I live at the intersection of Stanford and Princeton Street. Okay? Or if somebody asks you, which floor do you live on? You say, I live on the 7th floor. Or let's just say that you live on the highest floor of the building, like the 99th floor. So you can also say, I live on the 99th floor. Alright? And last, you might also sometimes need to give this information, and you can say, I live in an apartment. If you are in England, you might say, I live in a flat. You can also say, I live in a house. Alright. So, these are the three basic prepositions, at, on, and in, that you need to answer the fundamental question, where do you live? Now, to review that, next I'll be giving you a little exercise so you can practice what you've learned. So we have here Sam and Mary. So we ask them the question, where do you live? So let's go with Sam first. So for Sam, where do you live? I live in San Diego. Next one. Where do you live? I live on the 3rd floor. Remember, when you're talking about floor, we always use the preposition on. Next one. Where do you live? I live at 92 Imperial Street. So there's a number, so we always have to use the preposition at. Next one. Where do you live? I live in San Francisco because this is a state name. Next, where do you live? I live on the tribe. And lastly, where do you live? I live in an apartment. So this information is actually answered by Sam. So let's go now to the next one. So we have here Mary. So let's now ask the question, where do you live? So the first one, where do you live? I live at 39 Cordell Street. Next, I live in London. Next one, I live on Columbia Street. And we have 3 more questions. So next one is, I live in a rented flat. So remember this one. If you're in England, when someone asks you, where do you live? We don't actually say, I live in an apartment. Because normally, people say flat as the apartment. But if you are in America and other English-speaking countries, we use the word apartment. Alright? And next one. I live on 10th floor. And lastly, I live in England. Okay, so the only way to learn these is to practice them a lot. So good luck on your English. Bye-bye.